Welcome to Voiceprint with Trevor Devall and Guests. And now, your host and mine, Trevor Devall.
It has been so long since I've recorded an episode of Voiceprint, I don't even really know what episode number this is. I think it's 34. I'm going to go ahead and assume it's episode 34. Welcome back, ladies and James, to Voiceprint with Trevor Devall and Guests. I am, as always, your intrepid host, Trevor Devall, and today, in the studio, we have a guest who I've been waiting to get on the show, for a very long time, I can tell you. This is a man that I've worked with many times over the years in many different capacities in the voice world. And I just think he's a wonderful person and he's very talented. And we've often played, we've a lot of sort of father and son kind of thing. So in a way, it's like having dear old dad right here in the room. Father, oh father. Anyway, I'm just going to get right into it because it's been something like 8 months since the last episode or something ridiculous. So no more wasting time. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Oliver.
Oh, Trevor, thank you so much. You do me, et cetera, et cetera.
You're speechless. You're dumbstruck.
I'm lost for words. For once in my life, I'm totally lost for words. It's great to be on.
Thank you. It's great to finally have you here. Yeah, man, you look good as always. As always, you're looking fine. I know it's an audio podcast, so I need to sort of fill in the visual details. You know,
people can't hear leather. Well, they could,
but they can sense it.
They can sense it. Yeah.
So, how are things?
Well, I've been extremely occupied with a number of shows that I can't talk about because of non-disclosure agreements.
Of course, naturally.
What other things have I been working on? I took on the challenge of making a documentary about my silent film producer grandfather. Who produced over 200 silent films. So I've been doing that, and I finished the soundtrack for that a while ago, and I will be going back to Germany to work on that. And I've also been doing some voiceover work for the European market for some stuff in Italy. Right. And, fingers crossed, waiting to find out about the recent batch of shows that have come to Vancouver.
Yes, you and me both.
Yeah. And it's been interesting. This has been the year that people have suddenly considered me for a lot of things that they normally never considered me for. Part of the success in the voiceover industry, as you well know, is you get started with something, and people go, "Oh, this is our go-to guy for this type of character."
Right.
And of course, you're extremely grateful to be given the chance to render those types of characters. But then you would like people to think, "Oh no, I dwell on this all the time. So I would love it if you would consider me for this, that, or the other thing." So it's been a year of kind of defeating some people's preconceptions,
breaking out of molds.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. That's what we're going to talk all about that because there is a great deal I want to discuss with you. And before we get into the discussion of that, I do want to go over a little bit of your career. I want to see the credits according to IMDB. Anyway, we're going to have a look at your history.
And now, Voiceprint with Trevor Devall and Guests presents In Memoriam, a history of our guests' long and faithful service to the cause of voice acting.
I have here a list of your credits, according to IMDb. Now, as my faithful listeners know, IMDb and I are in a running battle because they're constantly misrepresenting me in my career, getting some things right, getting some things wrong, giving me credits for jobs that I've never done, giving other people credits for my jobs.
And no acknowledgement for my contribution to the world of adult entertainment whatsoever.
No, there's a bunch of. There's probably a good 3-4 pages here, but anyway, we're just going to kind of run down a few things here. You tell me if they're right or wrong. Actually, before we get into this, though, we were kind of discussing this before we started recording. But when I went to your IMDb site and I go to Mark Oliver, and there's a picture of some fella. And this is not you. This is not you. But it's clearly a credits. And I thought, oh, well, there must be other Mark Olivers. It's not a hugely uncommon kind of name. But as I was looking at the credits of this fella, who is clearly not you, no, this is your career. There it is, because there shows that, I've worked with you on. So what's the deal with this fella?
This gentleman is just somebody I happen to share a name with.
And he's an actor, I'm assuming.
He's an actor, and he has a thriving career in the megalopolis of Pittsburgh, that acting mecca. And
apologies to residents of Pittsburgh.
He seems like a decent enough guy. I contacted him, and we're just sort of sorting out these discrepancies in terms of credits right now, but if anybody out there has ever had to deal with the monolith that is IMDb, it can take a while to sort out these little mistakes, and such is the nature of transferring information via the internet.
Yes.
But if there are specific things that you'd like me to clear up, I'm sure I will do everything I can to help.
Well, I'll jump on some things here, or I'll mention some things, and if it's wrong, you go, eh.
I can go, eh.
All right, so what have we got here? See, right off the top, this sounds great. You tell me if this is correct. Sleeping Beauty Uncensored. See, if that's a thing, I want to know what that thing is. Too bad, because I was hoping there'd be a story to that one.
No, I could start riffing, but no.
Oh, boy. Okay, here we go. My Little Pony. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. You've worked on My Little Pony.
Yeah.
And according to this, you played Gustave Legrand.
This is true.
Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Have you been approached by the Brony community for your
No,
work?
I don't know what to do. I mean, does anybody want me to show up at cons and stuff like that?
Oh,
because
man.
I'd love to go to a con.
They're going to bombard my inbox now.
I've never... No, I did go to one con. I went to one con briefly, and I found it a fulfilling experience.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
And so people... I'm here. I mean, I'm twiddling my thumbs, waiting by the computer right now.
He's sitting, waiting with a glass of wine and a tear in his eye. Well, that goes for me, too. I was sort of set to do my first My Little Pony convention in November, but that fell through. So there's a couple more that apparently they're interested in bringing me for. But
we'll have to share some information after the broadcast.
Yes, we absolutely will. 'Cause it'd be great to do a con with you, Mr. Mark Oliver. It would be. It would be
no
fun.
coming back from that going.
All right. Underworld, Endless War. This was a short that we did here. You played Michael Corvin, is that right? Do you remember this? This is
Yes.
That was based on the Underworld movies with the vampires and the werewolves and stuff.
Yes, it was rendered in an anime style.
Yes.
And I'm sure everybody out there is familiar with the premise of the Underworld series. And I was a vampire elder, and my goodness, there was some kind of intrigue or conspiracy that I was responsible for.
Yeah.
You worked on that too.
Yeah, I was somebody.
Where did they go? We often were told that there will be an onslaught of these projects, and then
I don't know
why.
I assumed that they were using it to sort of sell the idea of a bigger series or something.
My God, we were good.
Oh, unbelievable. But we always are. What have we got here as well? A whole bunch of stuff which looks to me like on-camera stuff. Do you do a lot of on-camera work?
I have done some on-camera work. I've had the chance to work with people whom I've always respected. I think my first appearance ever was as an extra. I was on the set of Cinecittà in Rome, and my grandmother smuggled me onto the set of Satyricon. and Federico Fellini put me into a crowd scene. Now I'm not going to tell you where I show up in the movie, but I was enthralled by that by the entire experience of making films, and as I'll just double back to saying I come from a filmmaking background, so the idea of being in film seems to be kind of a natural. It's just the family trade, really. I've had some extremely riveting blink and miss it roles in esteemed classics such as 2012 and the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Right.
But in Vancouver, I would have to say that I enjoy the fraternity of the voiceover community tremendously. I'm not going to say that we're better actors, but we can kind of approach the endeavor of voice acting without all of this sort of... We're never held back by an 8x10. And I think it's very frustrating if people are trying to cast you and they are thinking of you the way they think of a location or thinking of the appropriate chair to put in a set. That's okay. I understand. I understand the constraints of motion picture production, but I find it far more liberating to defy the laws of physics, or
Or at least the laws of physicality.
in the world of voiceover. So
You're telling me that your first film gig was a Fellini picture? Oh, Mark Oliver.
well, you asked, so
I love you, baby. I love it. Oh, so good. Okay. So there's a bunch of credits on here again.
I'm really old.
Care Bears, the Giving Festival movie.
Oh yes.
What were you in Care Bears?
I've been the only bad Care Bear. I was the only bad. I don't have a belly badge, okay? I don't care about belly badges. I was
Slaughter
Grizzle.
Bear?
I was Grizzle.
Grizzle.
Do you remember that? Did you ever see it? You
I-
can't keep on top of everything, Trevor. But it was they'd written it in such a way. I thought, this is. I must tell you that I enjoyed playing or rendering these nefarious characters tremendously, because you can sneak in so much sort of subliminal stuff. And I have been told every once in a while they say, "No, Mark, you don't understand. It's just you're just an evil dragon who steals the magic key to the cavern. You're not the evil dragon who takes the little kid on a journey into the dark night of the soul." But Grizzle was one of those ones where
You're not taking him up the Mekong.
No. But it was tremendously. It was a tremendous role to play, and I got a lot of singing. I had a lot of singing to do in the show, and you can see through. Can I tell people to watch on YouTube? They can watch.
Absolutely.
They can watch and listen to Grizzle's song. I thought it was a lovely show. I don't know why. I don't know what they took it to Toronto. I think we were having some, I don't know, political thingy.
I want to talk about the music business with you again. I think a little bit after the break, because that's a big part of your life as well. And what a life! And I got to tell you, this is my opportunity to learn a little bit about the great mystery that is the life and times of Mark Oliver.
Well, I think that the nature of my life is one that led very naturally to a world in voiceover. I come, as I say, from a sort of showbiz family, and my father was a barrister. If people know what that is, he was a lawyer, a very sort of Perry Mason courtroom lawyer of renown, and that meant I got to, on special days, I would get to take off from school and watch him make a final address to the jury. And he was an extremely dramatic, theatrical character. And I think watching somebody manipulate the English language for a living made me realize, like, oh my goodness, you can really sway people's decision making, emotional conclusions, and I think what the voice actors realize is that although the eye is can I say this word? The eye is the whore of the senses.
You can say whatever word you
But
like.
sound is like a thief that sneaks in through the back door of the imagination. And so we try to bend the English language to psychological ends and make people arrive at this, that, or the other feeling. And it doesn't even matter particularly how the role is written if you see, oh, that's a really nice vowel in this sentence. And you know exactly what to do to milk the value of that sound. So I think it was sort of a perfect thing for me to do. I left this city, Vancouver, in 1983, and I moved to New York City, and I was going to sort of cut my teeth in the music scene of New York. And so I found myself living on the Lower East Side of Manhattan through, I suppose, in retrospect, a kind of a pivotal time in New York's cultural history. And I had the opportunity to cross paths with all sorts of people, which is just going to happen to anybody if they happen to be there over that period of time. And I realized that this was a city that allowed people to be larger than life, and it wasn't any big deal. And I felt very comfortable in the company of people who were like that. And I thought, oh, gosh, you can really lead your life at a very particular pitch or tenor. And I think that voice acting gives people who are disposed to being performers the license to be that big. And it's very therapeutic kind of exercise too, because I can scream and be a maniacal killer in a safe environment. And you get all this stuff off of your chest, and you can come home and people think, wow, what a wonderful, well-adjusted human being. Is that not the case? I don't know.
It is. It is. It's a bit of a miracle, actually.
Yeah.
If you think about it. Yes. Cool. Right. What else we got here? This is from. I've got a whole bunch of things. Like there it is, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, as well as Smallville. So you've worked on all of these different shows here in town as an on camera, as a screen actor, and then we have things like. Stormhawks, of course, which is Nerdcore's sort of. I think that was sort of their big breakout show, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was the one that really sort of propelled them to the unbelievable place they are now, which is like they're the Goliath of Vancouver animation because they're doing so much. But what was your role on Stormhawks?
Oh, I played three bad guys on Stormhawks. I played Mr. Moss, who was a sort of a deep-fried Southern prison warden. And I played the Colonel, who was a kind of a riff on a kind of a Colombian drug lord. I don't know if I can say that.
Of course.
I can't. A crime kingpin from South America. Let's see. Oh, and a completely demented Scottish pirate captain called Captain Scabulous.
Captain Scabulous.
Captain Scabulous.
Captain Scabulous.
Why do people assume?
What?
Never mind. What's the next question?
Next question. Right. Fantastic Four. You did some work on that series as well. Super Skrull. Does that sound right?
Super Skrull
and Commander Clert. See, I don't know anything. I don't know how these things work. Tom and Jerry, A Nutcracker Tale. This is something, you were a Dr. Malevolent.
I was Dr. Malevolent, and I was actually the narrator of that series. I did a very... that was a wonderful opportunity to render one of these sort of classic Valium-induced narrators. It was everything had to be delivered like, poor Tom, poor Tom, poor misguided Tom. And sometimes I get a bit of this type of, relax, loosen your tie, ease off your shoes, and watch your worries melt away. So it was that sort of a thing, and it was great. It's like, this is the easiest gig ever. It's just so, and I was thinking, I was just getting so relaxed.
And everyone's falling asleep.
Yeah. So, but of course, everybody who's watched Tom and Jerry knows it's a very frenetic kind of show. So I think they were sort of playing it for its ironic.
Yes, the nice contrast, as it were. That gets played it's become like it's a wonderful life. It's like on every year at Christmas now, because I have friends back home in Edmonton with kids that they're always, no, it's Uncle Trevor on the TV again. Okay, so that's kind of cool to be a Christmas institution.
Well, I think I mean, we've all had the opportunity to work on these sort of iconic brands that have almost mythological significance in popular culture. So
absolutely, something like Tom and Jerry, it is an icon of a whole era, of animation.
Just never would have thought. Like, you watch that show religiously when you're a child, and you think, and now I'm on that show.
It's
strange.
It is very odd. George of the Jungle. Speaking of another sort of well-known, iconic kind of character, you were Dr. Scott.
Dr. Toel Scott. Yes, I was this rendering a very vicious stereotype of Latin sensuality. Something like this. Yes, it was very. I was a Corinthian. That was a Corinthian accent.
Rich Corinthian. Can you sense it in the room, the rich Corinthian leather?
Trust me, that was the nature of my character that I incarnated on this show.
So many things here. Prison Break? Is that you? Did you do Prison Break? Or is that the other fella?
Well, maybe some of you maybe some of you rent a lot of hardcore pornography.
Here's one we get asked about all the time. See how I just cut that off. Here's one I actually get asked about a lot, is the Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War series of video games. We did a whole bunch of them here. You were quite prominent in a lot of them. This one, you were the Space Marine Librarian. I don't know if you recall.
I wasn't that kind of librarian at all, Trevor. How dare you?
Do you remember doing these?
Yes, I do.
These video games?
Yeah.
These are the ones that we affectionately called the voice wreckers, because they were so brutal with the screaming, and the yelling and the hey,
all the quelling,
hey.
I cannot destroy you till the cows come home.
This Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses. Now, you've done a number of Barbies.
I was a
haven't you?
princess on one of the 12 princesses.
You were just the most prettiest princess there was. You've done a number of Barbies, or was that the only one?
I've done a number of Barbies. If people are listening to this show, they know that most of the Barbies are rendered here in Vancouver, and I had a great time on I think it was it the last Barbie, and I played this mysterious Pomeranian Duke, something like that. I'm always like the evil vizier or a nefarious courtier or this type of, a slightly comic bad guy,
right,
on a Barbie show,
right.
But they're fun to do.
Yes, yes, they are. And there's a million of them. It seems like they're doing like 3 a year or something crazy like that, which is good for a movie franchise. What else have we got here? Hot Wheels Highway 35 World Race. Yeah,
Loved it.
okay. This was a series.
What was it? R1 or something?
RDL3 or RDL4 or
My-
RDL1.
My God, it's right there, and I'm surprised I remember it. It was that role was a very cold. How can I put it? A clinical, sort of meticulous English robot killer.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Transformers Cybertron. You played Thundercracker.
Undercracker. Someone. I was so mortified. Someone on a blog said that show would be really good, except for that guy who does like a really bad Southern accent. and I've spent a lot of time in the South. I've spent a lot of time in the in the southern United States, and I pay a tremendous amount of attention to the correct idiomatic use of English as spoken in those states, and I was really hurt.
There, you see, Internet? You hurt Mark. I hope you're happy, Internet.
It's just so faceless. You can't ever contact those people and say, no, you're wrong. Or you can't even explain yourself.
You know, the very first time I ever encountered you, it was on a show at Ocean. Years ago. But you were doing some kind of, you're doing some sort of real kind of sinister Southern guy. It was like for X-Men or something.
No, yes, it's real. You've got a great memory.
No, really.
I was playing Wolverine's dad. I was playing Wolverine's father, and so you think of Wolverine, but Wolverine's father had to come from somewhere deep in the Louisiana bayou. And I love this, and I'm sure you probably do too. If you engage in this sort of work, there's a tremendous amount of research that we all invest in. And I think that the really talented, well, I won't say talented, but the people who invest themselves in a voiceover career approach it. We don't do voices. We do people. We do characters. We think about rendering characters in the sense of as if we were spies, and we could be dressed in the how can I say, regional costume of one of these individuals and be parachuted 10 miles behind enemy territory and be able, hopefully, to pass unnoticed amongst the local populace. And I know that you're one of these actors who invests a tremendous amount into the authenticity of the voices that you do on these shows. And we're really not fooling around. Like, really, I'm not going to make it any easier. If you're really that involved in it, you will know where to go to find your references. But that could be as close as the nearest coffee shop because somebody speaks with an extremely authentic Parisian accent.
Right.
So we never. So I'm always mystified when people go, do Homer Simpson or
Dance, monkey dance.
whatever. I've never thought of it like that. I've only ever thought of it in terms of as if I was working for the CIA or MI6 or something like that. And they said, you must be this French person tomorrow at 4 or whatever.
Your mission in this session, if you choose to accept it.
Forgive my digression.
No. It's I've never heard it put quite like that before, but that makes it feel much cooler. Like spies.
It is cool. It's really cool. Because don't you ever have Australian Day? Or
every day is Australian Day.
No, I mean seriously. And for people who aspire to this type of profession, I urge all of you out there to give yourselves Australian Day or French Day or Italian Day and go out there and be that person. What are they going to say to you at Starbucks or whatever? You're not really Australian.
Do you know what? This is exactly what I do all the time, and it's a sickness. I'm a sick man, Mark. It's a sickness. Every time I go to anywhere else in the world, doesn't matter where, I can't resist. I'm somebody else. I not for the whole time, but like, for example, when I was in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, I should say, when we were in Saigon, I'm at this after-hours bar.
You spoke to everyone with the Vietnamese accent.
Hello, we are looking for the fish special, which is the worst Vietnamese accent ever.
They blended right in.
That's right. I passed unseen among the Vietnamese. My blue eyes didn't give it away at all, or my white skin. Anyway, so we were at this after-hours bar in Saigon, and I was traveling around with this Australian guy and this German fella, who was named Matthias, and he sounded very stereotypical. Like, Matthias was a wonderful man, but he sounded precisely like he was just out of the Luftwaffe or something. And so anyway, he was great dude. But this after-hours place, and me and Matthias are walking. I can't believe I'm telling this story on my show, but
I'm fascinated.
we're walking by this table where our Australian friend is sitting there with all these girls, of course, and everybody's all drunk and stuff, and I just decide, you know what, I'm going to be German now. And so I turned to Matthias and I said, just follow my lead on this, okay? He's like, oh, don't get me into trouble. I'm like, oh, no, it'll be fine. So Gregor says, oh yeah, this is my friend Matthias, and I go, Helmut. And Gregor kind of, like my Australian friend, he kind of understands by this point that, okay, maybe, all right, this is Helmut. And so I begin to speak like Matthias. But the funny thing is that the girls would the girls say, oh, so where are you from? Oh, we are from Germany. Do you understand? Have you been to Germany before? No, I've never been. Oh, well then, because I could make up anything I want at that point. And she asks Matthias something, and he's about to answer, and I turn and go, unfortunately, Matthias speaks no English. So what he would do is, I would translate for him.
He's like a bumpkin from Mannheim. We can't even understand his German. He's such a yokel.
We found him on the bus. Now we take him with us for laughs, But anyway, so he could only speak German now. So he would speak German, and I would go, and then I would translate what he said. But of course, I don't speak German. So
all you have to do in a situation like that is just go, genau.
Genau.
Genau. You can go genau, or you can go, ach, das ist super Hammer. So when you want to say awesome, if you want to say, I've drawn this into, and of course, if you're doing these jobs and they want you to render things in a regional accent,
right.
and you say German or whatever, you go, my God, what actual German words can I throw in? And that can actually win the day for you. So, every once in a while, if a character has a moment where they would say, oh, that's awesome, you'd say, no one would say awesome in Germany, but they would say, das ist Hammer. Or they say,
Hammer.
If it's really, really awesome, you can say, ach, das ist super Hammer. So, anyway.
Well,
that's great. But it's good to have German Day, too.
It is. German Day or English Day or Irish Day. Irish Day I just had a few weeks ago at a party. I don't know, it just came on me. I couldn't stop myself.
You own Irish Day.
Yeah, I own that day. Anyway, holy, thrown off kilter here. Crypto the Superdog. This is one of my favorite characters I've ever heard you do. Mechanicat. Do you remember Mechanicat?
I love Mechanicat because Mechanicat gave me the opportunity to do all of these sort of. I don't expect people to be familiar with the world of Gilbert and Sullivan, Dolly Cart, these very, very broad kind of musical English characters. And there's a word, supercilious, that describes these types of characters. The sort of people who speak like that. See, Mechanicat was really sort of this type of character.
Oh, man.
It was very, very lawn tennis, as we like to say. So... And you see, that's another aspect of my history, because you see, my parents, in their infinite wisdom, sent my brother and I to one of these public schools in England. And so we were brought up amongst all these people, and I actually had people who instructed me with this sort of voice. So,
wow.
Yes. It's very well. Yes. So you see, you learn from the examples of real life. I didn't even have to go to, YouTube didn't exist. We had to just riff.
Come up with it yourself.
Yes.
I remember when I was dating this lovely girl from England, and we were going all over England and seeing, the countryside stuff, and I kept saying to her, okay, take me to the place where they speak posh.
Oh my gosh. Well, those are very, when you talk about the upper class English accent, the one you're referring to, or sometimes it's called RP, received pronunciation.
Yes.
It is not so much a geographical destination.
It's more of a class thing.
It's a class. It's a class thing, and it's ever dying. There are a couple of people. If you heard my mother is a living exemplar of what Nancy Mitford would call you. There's you and there's non-you English. And non-you is non-upper class. And also, there are all these words, too. Like, you would never say, you can spot these people by the nouns they use. Like, an upper class person would never use the word serviette. They'd say table napkin. They would never say riding on horseback. They say, I'm riding a horse. So all these sort of little cultural identifiers. And the worst sort of thing that the worst sort of thing would be saying something like pardon or beg pardon as opposed to saying excuse me. And so, and the environment of school such as the one that I went to, which was Downside Abbey, that's gone. Like it's just an era that's disappeared. So I was lucky to learn by the examples in front of me, and to watch these people manage English in this very, very particular way. And now, of course, we have estuary English, which is sort of the way everybody tries to speak. And if you watch Prince William or Prince Harry, they make a very conscious effort to speak in this estuary English. And what does it do? It conveys this sense of like, don't worry, we're on the same page.
Right.
I'm not
we're,
a posh.
We're just folksy. That's what
Exactly.
we're British folksy.
It's exactly it. And but even I and estuary English is a phenomenon that's sort of taken root since the time I went to school. So even I have to pay attention to that, because it's just going to be embedded in the kind of projects that we have coming up. Mm-hmm. And there was something that came by last week, and I thought, oh, that's an estuary voice. I have to pay attention to that.
But don't you find, though, and I know this is a bit off track for where I wanted to go right now,
This
but
is a very nerdy voiceover talk, people. I'm so sorry.
No, they love it, trust me. Or at least I do, and it's my bloody show, so there is. I've found so many times that, when you do an English accent or something, like, for example, we did an audition last week, I believe.
Yes.
We both know what we're talking about here, where one of the characters was referenced as a British accent, and so I did it like that, and right away the director said, no, and it's because the Americans, they have a hard time with that. And I'm like, why are you dumbing this entire country down? Why are you assuming that they can't understand what they're hearing? They watch Monty Python, don't they? They understand that.
I think it's terrible that people second guess the imagination, particularly of a young audience. When I was a kid, and I invested hours and hours and hours in watching cartoons, and I wanted these exotic characters. I wanted to be taken away, up and away from the humdrum every day. I didn't want to identify with them.
Right.
I wasn't going to be alienated if somebody, because I remember Haji on Johnny Quest. He was like, why don't we make Johnny Quest's buddy an Indian kid? Mm-hmm. Whoever thought it? And they thought, okay. And would that happen today? No, it would never happen. Because it would be, someone would make, a premeditated strike against being perceived as being politically incorrect.
Right.
And that, of course, opens up the whole can of worms of all the voices that we're not allowed to do anymore.
Yes, exactly.
Because we could hurt someone's feelings. And then, it could be next year when we won't be allowed to do English characters anymore, because it'll be perceived as being
somehow
hateful or hurtful or whatever.
It is. It's mad. It is completely mad. And actually, this reminds me of something. Again, this was something that I sort of looked up to you for when we were doing a show called A Kind of Magic way back in the day, which was,
my goodness, that was a lot of fun.
That was a tremendous amount of fun. But you were playing a sort of very, very uppity, sort of, very proper prince. He was a prince turned into a frog.
And you were playing Gregor,
the big ogre father. Yeah, Great show, great fun. But I remember there were so many times, because the scripts were written by. A lot of the time they were written by, it was a co-pro with France. So a lot of French writers would write. And of course, sometimes the jokes don't exactly translate. They lose something in the translation. So, we would fix them, right? With the blessing of the director and the production team.
Or just help it, just help it play to a North American audience.
Right. And I remember, because of the character you were playing, which was a very prim and proper sort of British, person, that every now and then you would throw in $1 million word, right? You'd throw in a great, and I understood the vocabulary. I understood what you were getting. But the director would say, no, I don't think that the American kids will understand what that is, so we're just going to use sort of the dumbed down version. And I would always be gnashing my teeth thinking, why don't we use this opportunity to actually teach them something? Why don't we use a word that is slowly going out of fashion in the vernacular? And why don't we maybe if you do that, maybe the kid goes, what does that mean? What does that mean, Mommy? And Mommy goes, I don't know, look it up on the interwebs.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Well, I know. I grew up in a household where I'd see my mother standing on a balcony, and she'd say, do you hear that? I go, what? The sustrousness of the trees.
Oh man. That's
So,
awesome.
I mean, and I'd be like, just sounds good. And you go like, I gotta find a dictionary. But that was me. And I think, you know, when you do voiceover work, you're interested in language, the sheer sort of tonal value of it, the sound of it, what words, you know, the meaning of words, and what is conveyed, and of course, also double entendre and that sort of thing is very important. But yeah, I know I give people a lot of credit, and I always want to give them more credit. I think, no, they're smarter than that. They'll get this, or for you guys, you guys out there, I know you pay attention to this stuff, and I know that you don't have very far to go if you needed to do a little bit of reference checking or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
it's yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Dragon Booster, word pain. This is the father-son thing I was referencing before. This was
and you are the only person. You're the only person that I've worked with on these shows, and you're aware of our characters' relationship on the shows, and you're very insistent on maintaining an eye line.
Isn't
and
that
I always
funny you say that?
I always appreciated that, and and people would look up and they go like, "Oh my God, they're acting with each other."
It really doesn't happen that often. It's not
No.
a very common thing.
No, and I just thought, this is the greatest job in the world.
You know what? I have to tell you, I
so
think
entertained.
that is unbelievable that you say that, because when I teach, I do a lot of teaching around town, and when I teach in the first class, one of the examples I use is you and I in Dragon Booster, and you, about how you would always end your line, because we would stand next to each other. That's the way they would set us up. And you would always end your line by sort of looking directly at me. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh, that's great. He's given me this gift as an actor to just fuel my next line.
Or it's also cool too, like if you're standing next to somebody and you have if you have the opportunity to be doing one of these shows and you're standing next to someone, you can touch their shoulder, and it just changes everything in the nature of their reaction.
Yes.
So we'll go there. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll go there.
Anyway, I just want to thank you for that, Father. That was a really good time.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Well, right back at you, Trevor. Gosh.
That was awesome. I remember Matt Hill, who played the lead on that. He used to tease me all the time about playing Mordred, because the whole, the fact that Mordred had severe daddy issues, and the line was always, "Oh, Father," and he would always make it sound like Sylvester's little guy. "Oh, Father, there's a problem in."
I don't think it ever came. I don't ever think it came out like that.
Oh man, so many here. And finally, well, not finally, but here is a huge one that the fans always talk about, and in fact, there's a lot of questions about this. Gundam Seed. Rao LeCreuset. This, in anime circles, is sort of a huge character that you played. What can you tell us about that? He was the masked fella, if you recall.
Well, everything came to a head right towards the end of Gundam. And I went off into this really dark, megalomaniacal territory, and I asked myself, where does that come from? And I find it so difficult to justify. I mean, I'm not a bad person. My friends would attest to that. But that was a very strange character to render, and particularly in the last episode where Rao dies. And
Spoiler!
uh-oh. Darn.
If they haven't seen it by now, to hell with them.
But this goes back to what I was saying about how amazingly therapeutic it is to get this sort of stuff off of your chest, and that was a very strange day recording those episodes. It was just, I'd spent the morning, I'd sort of had a heads up. I'd spent the morning watching Hitler's speeches on YouTube.
Wow, that'll put you in a zone.
Yeah. So, not because I wanted to do a German accent, but I was thinking because when we were in the studio, we don't stand there with our arms sort of clasped on either side of us. We're given, as long as we don't knock over all the forest of microphones that are in the studio, but we can invest a lot of body language in the way that we perform those roles, and that was definitely. And I was just soaking wet. I was drenched with sweat. It was great. Because you don't think you're going to get that kind of acting opportunity given the nature of a show like that. So it's funny you should ask me.
Well, there's going to be a whole lot of other people who want to ask you questions just like that when we come back, so don't go anywhere.
Take a look around. What do you see? A community. It's where you work. It's where you grow. It's where you live. And your local bank is right there with you, growing. So when banking, why not use the only bank that's entirely honest about how we do business? Bastard Bank. The only bank that's 100% honest. We don't rip you off any worse than any other bank. The difference is honesty. We may screw you over, but we'll never lie to you. We're growing every time you buy anything on debit, be it gas, food, or children's clothing, or even just making a withdrawal. Don't like it? Try a Money Mart. Because at Bastard Bank, we take your money and we give it to you straight. Yes, the lineups will be long with only one cashier during a busy lunch hour. Yes, our hours are inconvenient. And yes, the bank machine kiosk will be littered with paper and stinking of stale urine. That's the Bastard Bank guarantee. And we won't spend a single penny on hiring someone to clean it up, or add another teller in the middle of a Friday afternoon rush. All of that money will go into slick PR campaigns, such as this commercial. In fact, they only hired me to narrate this spot because a market research survey determined Scottish to be the most trustworthy accent. Words like community, opportunities, and family are what really matters, both in life and in a cynical PR campaign designed to anthropomorphise a heartless corporation. Bastard Bank, we're richer than you think.
You're listening to Voiceprint with Trevor Devall and Guests.
And we are back with part 2 of the Mark Oliver interview here on Voiceprint with Trevor Devall and Guests. Mark, do tell me, how the hell did you get into this business we call show? How did you wind up doing this?
Well, I'll tell you, I was in New York City, and I'd done a silly thing. I married this very glamorous woman.
Oh my!
Oh yeah, and then I stayed married for about 15 minutes, and then this lovely girl left me for another man.
As they do.
I thought, poor baby, she's losing her mind. Anyway, she hadn't lost her mind. And I came back to Vancouver to lick my wounds. And a friend of mine said, you like getting drunk at these parties and doing these stupid voices. Why don't you do that professionally? And I'm like, forget it. It's a closed shop. It's like the Freemasons. You can't get in. You just can't. You have to wait. They give you a secret handshake and say, you. And I didn't think that day was ever going to come. So I went to one of these professional seminars that they will host at the Vancouver Film Festival.
Right.
And it was part of the panel that they were conducting on the world of animation and voiceover in Vancouver. And there were various people who I'm happy to say are now my esteemed colleagues who were on this panel. And I thought, talentless hacks. I could do that. I could totally do that. And I'd had so much experience with recording music and bands and stuff. I thought, this is easy. You have to do a demo, and you don't have to worry about EQing drums or bass or anything. You just have to, like, capture the voice. So I hired myself a demo studio, and I'd asked the advice of a couple of people whom I'd met who were voice actors, and they were guys. And let me tell you, if you're looking for advice to get into the voiceover world, do not ask somebody of the same sex. Don't. Just don't do that. So they said, there's really very little room. I'd say just stay in your room and keep doing those voices. And there's nothing wrong with taking enjoyment from that. Which is what I was told.
Although you will go blind eventually.
You will go you will go blind. But gosh darn it, no. I persevered, and I did this, and I did a demo, and I was prepared to go back and even gamble an extra $150 and render some characters again.
Wow.
Because I thought they could be done even better.
Wow, dedication.
I don't know. I heard what I was doing. I thought, that can be done better. So I did it, and then I got an agent, and I went on an audition, no dice, and I went on another audition, and then on the third audition, I booked a role on this show called Pocket Dragons.
Ah, yes.
And I played
And what year was this?
That was in, I'm going to say 1999.
Okay.
1998, 1999. And I showed up, and people were not very welcoming. You get this whole thing of like, and you are...
Really?
And you are here to do... But, you know, you learn on the job, and you watch what people do, and you're like, oh, you can do that? Oh, you can do that? And particularly I was watching how people would include a lot of onomatopoeias. I mean, like weird sound effects and stuff like that. And they made free and easy with sneezes and coughs and throat clearing and all that sort of stuff to color in the characters that they were there to render. And I thought,
Effort sounds, as
right.
we call them.
And so I thought, this is kind of neat. And then the next thing that I booked was a role on a show called War Planets in the United States, and it was called Shadow Raiders in Canada.
Right.
And it was made by Mainframe, and it was again they were riding on the success of Reboot, and then I suddenly was thrown into this room with all of these like hotshot gunslingers, and that went on for quite a while, that show, and I guess I learned a hell of a lot just from working on that show. And I played a king of a planet in outer space, and again, I think that was where all my English school experience got put to work, because I could render these types of characters. And then so for a long time after that, they thought, well, this is what Mark Oliver does. You know, if you want to do these sort of upper class twits or whatever, you can bring him in and he won't make an ass of himself. And so I did that for quite a while until I could bring up the aspect of my own history, which was 14 years living in New York City. So why couldn't I read for these types of East Coast characters?
Because there's some freaking characters right there, 14 years.
Exactly. Exactly. So it wasn't a question. It wasn't because I'd sat down and watched seasons 1 and 2 of The Sopranos, or it was. I only had to think of my landlord.
Right. You lived it, man.
I lived it. Thank you, Trevor. and that was really how it started. And it was the first time that a major industry had responded to really anything from my imagination. And I'd been banging my head against the wall for a long, long time trying to eke out a living in New York City as a rock and roller, as a singer, and interesting kind of close calls. I'd done backup vocals for Madonna and all sorts of people like that. So it was just like reaching for the brass ring, and just missing. And so the idea that I could show up to a studio and do this type of work was great. And suddenly I was like, you mean I'm solvent? Like for the first time in my adult life?
Right.
I couldn't believe it. I have to pinch myself to this day.
Right. I'm still pinching myself every day I wake up.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is the life.
I know. You said to me before in the past, you'd say, cops could come in here and you're not really working, buddy.
The men in black suits.
Yeah, the men in black suits. You're just fooling around, doing stupid voices.
I'm sorry, Mr. Oliver. You're going to have to get a job and join society.
Yeah. So it's the perfect riposte to every math teacher I ever had who said, you won't amount to a hill of beans, boy, until you pass this algebra examination. So
Unless you can calculate pi to the 27th. Did you ever take any acting lessons or anything like that? Were you ever interested in acting as a youth in England, I assume?
I went to the Burt Reynolds School of Dinner Theater in Boca Raton, Florida.
Really?
No, I did not.
Well, because that would be the greatest story ever.
We had a very intensive Shakespeare program at school, and we went through the classics. And
you were born and raised in England, yes?
No, I was born in Vancouver, but my
see.
father was a diplomat, so I've lived all over the place. I lived in England, I lived in
But
Switzerland.
you got your schooling over there in England.
That's right, my reading, writing, and suffering.
Right.
And
Your book learning.
and
as
book
they
learning.
say.
And you see, that was a whole voiceover challenge right there, because at that particular time, people were not very welcoming to North Americans, particularly in the environment of this type of school. So I started sounding more and more English in order to adapt and just sort of
Survive.
be left. Yeah, just be left to my own devices.
Right.
But at the same time, I would say that because of trace memory, I can still access aspects of North Americanness as the job demands.
Right.
So that's really my story, I'd have to say, as far as how I got my break in the industry.
How you got your wings?
How I earned my wings. I'm still earning my wings.
So if you had any advice for people trying to get into this business we call show, what would it be? You've already actually thrown out some gems already, but if I had to ask you a direct question, you, Mark Oliver, now, if you had some advice for someone who wanted to become a voice actor or get involved in our world, what do you think is the most important thing for them to focus on?
Learn how to read scripts. Number one, read scripts. There are so many secrets and clues hidden within scripts. If you can go to a local studio and say, "Hey, do you have any old animation sides that you wouldn't mind letting me have?" Maybe they'll give you some. And you look at them and you think of the 3 different ways that you could render a character that you respond to. And I would also say, don't make it an ordeal. Like, if you don't respond to characters right away, come back to them later on. It shouldn't be excruciatingly hard. It should be easy, and it should be fun. When you watch all of us doing our thing in the studio, are we playing? Definitely. We're definitely playing. But we play with the seriousness of children at play, in the way that when kids play, they're really that person. It's not like, it's a game. Sure, it's a game, but we give ourselves complete freedom to deliver ourselves over to being somebody else. We take a holiday from being ourselves. And you have to give yourself permission to do that. Perhaps that's a very complex way of answering
No,
that type of
actually,
question.
I was just thinking it's an extraordinarily eloquent way of putting it. But the idea is true of being, when you watch kids at play, they're deadly serious about
They're
their
deadly
play.
serious.
You know?
They
really are.
They're deadly
They're
serious.
not commenting on it. They're not looking at themselves from outside the box and going, well, I think you could play a little differently in this way. Maybe if you just improved the way you go down that slide and pretend to be Han Solo, it would really just, no, it's
If
there.
I was going to say all the sort of things that producers or directors had said to me in the past, then I'd say you should start off by writing down the entire family of voices that you can do. How believably old can you be? How believably young can you be? And start making a list of target regional dialects and foreign accents. If you can't do it today, that doesn't matter. I can do a lot more stuff today than I could when I started. Why? Because it's on my mind. Mm-hmm. It's on my mind to break down the idiosyncrasies of South African accents.
I was just about to say that for me, the holy grail of accents, my entire career has been South African, but over the past few months, I've started to learn it. And I started to learn it by accident because as I learned most of my accents by accident, I had to do a Kiwi accent at one point. And one particular sentence I said in the Kiwi accent just came out sounding South African. But that one little sort of diphthong that happened was like the key that unlocked the door to the South African accent. So
I know. Is it
was
funny?
just amazing.
Isn't it funny to put it like that? But I think that's an extremely succinct observation, Trevor.
Well, I like to be succinct. And with that, let's listen to what's in the mailbag.
Martin's Mailbag.
This is from Martin in Toronto to YTV. Here is where you can hear your favorite Vancouver VAs this fall. On YTV, we have Kid vs. Cat, League of Super Evil, and Rated A for Awesome. On Teletoon, we have Ninjago, Johnny Test, and George of the Jungle. And he wants to know, is it true Brad Swale played the voice of God on the recent Oogie Loves in the Big Balloon Adventure movie? I don't know. I can't even say the name of the show, so I can't tell you. Here is where you can hear some familiar characters from Mark Oliver, Raoul Lecrousset of Gundam Seed and Gundam Seed Destiny, Thundercracker of Transformers Cybertron, Grizzle of Care Bear's Adventures in Carolot, Super Skrull of Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes, King Kryos of Shadow Raiders, and the Colonel of Stormhawks. Morton wants to know, did everyone enjoy seeing Trevor play Sir Atticus Moon on the Big Time Rush movie? How many cats did Trevor go through? Which evil laugh was his best one? I think we should have the audience send Trevor their favorite moments of Atticus Moon. If you really want to send me your favorite moments of the role I played. The first on-camera job I've had in 10 years for Nickelodeon, Big Time Movie, which is a movie that was a movie for Big Time Rush, the series down there. Then by all means, send in, and I shall tell you whatever you like. Also, for those of you that missed it, just a little brief self-plug here. I did an interview last month at BearcastRadio.com on the Dennis Daniel Show, where I revealed to great aplomb that I was the one who played Iron Will on My Little Pony, and apparently this was a big deal, because nobody knew who was playing Iron Will, and as it turned out, it was me who was Iron Will the entire time. So I revealed it on the show, and he kind of freaked out a bit. It was pretty funny, but you can check it out yourself when you get a chance. And also, just so you know, kids, if you do kids, listen to me, and also kids, if you do follow people on Twitter, I am now officially on Twitter. Who knew? I decided to join us in the 19th century. My handle, or whatever you call it, is at Trevor Devall. So please do follow. Anyway. Our first, actually it's our last question. This question just came in today, but this is from Justin, formerly from New Jersey, now living in Florida. Hello, Trevor Devall. I have 3 questions for both you and your guest, Mr. Mark Oliver. 1, seeing you both worked at Ocean Studios, what's your personal opinion on the voice direction that you're given there?
Well, that's a very good question, Justin. And I'd have to say we've been in the capable hands, for the most part, of a fellow. Can I give his name?
Yes, he's been on the show.
Carl Willems.
Yes, he's been on the show.
Carl is a very sophisticated director. You know, the task of a director is to make you feel semi-divine for the 5 or 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever that you happen to be in front of them. And he's always encouraged us to use our imaginations to the utmost. And I'd also have to give props to James Cargill, who is a very, very thoughtful guy. So if you like the way that shows like Gundam are rendered, a lot of that can be attributed to the very sophisticated direction of someone like James Cargill, who surprises me with just sort of layers of meaning that I miss. And I could just, if I had a rubber leg, I'd just kick myself in the ass because I missed it.
Question number 2. Considering that most of the time you don't really know anything about the shows you work on at Ocean Studios, do the directors tell you anything about the show by any chance? And could you give more detail about how things work over there when you're recording the shows? Because I'm completely clueless, he says. It's funny, with James, now that he's moving a lot into prelay stuff, he does a summary of every scene, which is fascinating to me. I've never seen that before. He reads a summary that he's created of the scene before we record it. I'm just astounded that level of dedication and attention to detail. That's tremendous. I think I don't tend to know anything about the shows we do. I don't tend to know what the hell's going on. So I go in and I say to Carl, what's going on? And sometimes he'll say, well, okay, so what's just happened is blah, 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 blah. Or sometimes he'll say, you know what? Even I don't know. Just say the words.
I always think of this interview I saw with Michael Caine where he'll say, and I just pick up the script and I look at it and I just decide that I'm not going to read the rest of the script because, what does it matter? I'm in South Africa or something. And I don't know what's going on with the other characters, and so why should I read the rest of the script? It's got nothing to do with me.
Laziest actor ever. I love him.
Well, I mean, but it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense if they're just focusing on you. I mean, we do read the entire scripts. We do.
Sure.
And I do.
Oh, you're keener.
Well, I mean, they made it so easy now because, they send you the scripts and you just have to, search for your character's name in the PDF. highlight. And you write down, and when I go to the studio and I have a list of where I show up, or what page and what line and stuff like that, but I do pay attention to story arc, and these directors do explain to you what the hell is going on.
Yes.
If they feel that it is crucial to where your character is supposed to be.
But a lot of the times it's not, because we have an instinct, and I think that a lot of the times they just allow us to trust our instinct. Because when you look at a script like that, there's only so many emotional directions a character can go based on certain circumstances that you already kind of instinctually understand. So it's pretty hard to make the completely wrong choice. Sometimes it does, but then that's what they're for.
Hey, and I also want to say that when you work with people like Trevor or myself, and we're really good.
If we do say so ourselves.
When we put our stamp on the proceedings, they go, my gosh, I would never have imagined that aspect of the story, but you've just opened up this whole other realm of possibility with the way that you've incarnated the role. So every once in a while...
We blow minds.
Oh, yes, my friends.
Question number 3. Would you have Carl Williams on the show again? Yes. The answer is yes. All I have to do is ask him. Ha! Will I get around to that? I hope so. This is from G. Trevor, you are terrible at keeping promises. I am shaking my head at you. Your laziness has gone too far this time, but don't worry. These are my fans. Can you believe it? This is how I get treated by the people who apparently love me. I still love you in Voiceprint no matter what. This question is from Mark. If you could be in any Disney or Pixar movies, which ones would you pick?
Oh, the one that they're just about to make.
Best answer ever. And I'm going to go with that one too. This one's from Anna. Hi there, I'm a big voice actor fan. I listen to all of your podcasts. I'm a huge Ward Perry and Michael Donovan fan. Is there any possibility that you would be interviewing them in the future? Thanks. Well, Anna, I, too, am a huge Ward Perry and Michael Donovan fan. Ward, I haven't seen in a long time. I know he's doing a lot of writing these days, but I would love to have him. I think he's still around town, so I will endeavor to have him on the show. Mike Donovan is now in Los Angeles, but he does come up here quite a bit to direct a number of shows. So if I can organize a little session with Michael next time he's up, I certainly will, so stay tuned. This one's from Caitlin. Hey, Trevor and Mark. Mark, just so you know, you're one of my favorite voice actors in the world. My question for you two is, do you like it if you can help develop a character, or do you prefer it when you're just given direction?
I love both. I love direction. I love direction. I like to feel sometimes just that I'm a precision instrument that can be handled in a sophisticated way, and that my mind is a palette of colors that people can use to create any kind of canvas if they wish. I'm not precious about the way that characters are rendered, and, you know, I have to tell you, some people have accused me of being a smug, egocentric person. And I like to disprove that to myself by just throwing ego away and go, tell me what to do. And in the hands of capable directors, I've become people that I never would have dreamt I could become. So I don't know if I'm answering your question properly.
I think you are. I think you are.
All right.
My answer is, I can't stand being given direction. What the hell do they know? I'm the actor! No.
Yes.
Anyway, this is from Robin in Australia. Mark, I most fondly remember you for these two roles. Raoul Le Creuset, the friendly-sounding, sinister British ace pilot, and as we found out later, psychopath. I always heard from friends who have watched the dub, you're one of the standouts, along with Trevor, who even does better than the original Japanese actor. I can see how in those final few episodes where you just go insane and eccentric in your performance, where you ranted in a crazed manner, running through this abandoned research facility and shooting it out with Moo, Trevor, and Kira, Matt Hill. Kudos to you, I enjoyed it a ton. The second one in brief is War Planets, one of those early mainframe shows I enjoyed watching, and it wasn't until years later I realized that it was you as King Kryos, the leader of Frost Planet, and had to deal with a rebellious daughter. I hope to hear you in more roles. Mark. Mark, firstly, before you answer this, put yourself in the Raoul Le Creuset voice, if you will. Dance monkey. Now the question is, as Raoul Le Creuset, if you had to kill someone, how would you do it?
I would eviscerate them with a butter knife.
Because it's more painful, you twit.
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not a knife?
This is from Michael in Toronto. Question 1. Lately, due to the horrible announcement that Michael Bay is going to... I should really read these before I go on the air. Lately, due to the horrible announcement that Michael Bay is going to destroy my childhood by making the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles aliens instead of turtles, I found myself watching the classic 80s cartoon. I found that over the course of the series, there were certain episodes where some of the major characters were voiced by more than one actor, sometimes only for an episode or two if the principal actor was unavailable. With prelay animation, I notice that fans are more open to adapting to another actor's rendition of a character than they are in anime shows. If there was a time you couldn't voice a character you were playing in a show due to other commitments or what have you, who would you recommend to be your replacement or stand-in, and why? Interesting. So out of the fraternity of voice people, as you call us, who would you think would be the right one to replace you? Now, this is an awkward question, because, of course, we all get replaced at some point.
Well, Jeremy Irons comes to mind.
Well, yes.
Jonathan Pryce.
Yes, as well. Good.
Gary Oldman.
Wow, okay. Good. I like it. No one could replace me, Michael. Except for those guys who have. Question 2. I'm finding it difficult to gain experience as an audio engineer even after finishing school, so I've decided to start recording some music. I have been recording some music I've been writing. That's the benefit of punctuation and not ignoring it. I have also decided to create a podcast of my own to practice what I learned in school. Has there ever been a time where you found it difficult to land an acting job due to your lack of exposure or experience? And what did you do to make up for your lack of experience or shortcomings? Wow. Was there ever a time where you didn't land a job because you felt it was your lack of experience or exposure? And what did you do?
Well, I have a lot of brass fronts. I got to tell you, when I was a kid, my band, my punk rock band, Bang Bang, we got chosen to open up for the Clash for their combat rock tour. And Joe Strummer and Mick Jones from the Clash came backstage just before we went on and said, "Here you go, lads, break a leg." And they gave us a bottle of champagne, which was open. And I thought, curious, isn't the whole sort of ritual sort of supposed to pop the cork and everything like that? And we drank the champagne, and then we went out on stage for the first time at the Carsdale Arena here in Vancouver, which seats about 8,000 people. And after about 10 minutes, I realized I was peaking on LSD.
Oh, zing.
And if you've ever had to do a show in front of 8,000 people on LSD,
And
it's all downhill from that point. So I think you just have to put up a lot of brass front, as they say in England. And I've never been intimidated by being in the company of professionals or whatever. You know, you get one shot, and it's not a rehearsal, and you just got to tough it. You have to tough it out sometimes. So. And if you fail, I never learn from my successes. I only ever learn from my failures.
Right. And I will say that sometimes we can be hypercritical of ourselves, but we always have to remember that we are very often our own worst enemy and our worst critic.
Yeah.
And that the job that we think was substandard could have actually made a massive difference to someone who was on the receiving end of it. And we have no way of knowing that until they come and they tell us. But in our line of work, it's so rare that we get a chance to hear that. You know, I've had a number of wonderful stories where I've had fans come up to me and relate incredible stories to me about personal change and illumination in their lives that are based on something I did in a cartoon. It's astounding to me. But we always got to remember that if you think you're not getting it or not not succeeding, every action we take causes a reaction somewhere. So try and remember that and try and make the healthiest action you can, because that'll give the healthiest reaction.
That's very edifying of you to mention that, Trevor.
Well, I do try. This is from Chris from Ireland. Hi, Trevor. Discovered the pod. No, I'm not going to do it. Discovered the podcast earlier this year and demolished the archive. Demolished meaning... Oh, that was you that erased my heart. Oh, no, demolished is good. I went through it. Okay. These kids these days... demolished the archive, so I'm now caught in the torturous zone of waiting for the next episode that your longtime listeners are used to. I know, it's pathetic. As someone with an interest in voice acting and voice actors, the Vancouver talent pool was one that I was never especially familiar with outside of their work on the various Transformer shows, which I'm a huge fan of. But your show has really opened my eyes and ears up about it. And I've made a point of checking out a few of the series that you often talk about. In particular, I just finished Black Lagoon, which I'd heard of before but never looked into, and really enjoyed it. Which brings me to my question. An additional 5-episode follow-up to Black Lagoon has been released in Japan, and I was wondering, is there any word of it being dubbed by your fine selves? Were you in Black Lagoon at all? Do you recall? That was the one with lots of swearing. Lots of swearing.
I think so.
Yeah?
I think I can't recall. I mean, I'll have to. You know what? I'll have to go back and look through my records.
I think the answer is probably. You know, if you can't remember, you probably were.
The one with the swearing.
The one with the lots of the swearing. Marika was the lead in it, and Brad Swale, of course, who's the lead in every anime that's ever existed. I don't know anything about more Black Lagoon. They keep us horribly in the dark when it comes to this stuff. I have no knowledge of what's going on in the anime world. I know not a lot. There's not a tremendous amount of dubbing going on these days.
I mean, you know, I'll have to say something. you guys out there are our go-to resource for finding out a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You're very diligent about telling us the machinations behind the scenes. So I have to say thank you very much for keeping us in the loop.
Yeah, no kidding. Because you guys really do know more about this than we do. This one is from Dustin, right here in Vancouver. I've been listening to the podcast ever since the first episode, and I'm always meaning to write in, but it usually slips my mind. When you announced that Mark Freaking Oliver was going to be on the next episode...
Is that Dustin Hege?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no. Can we give us that... Can we give his phone number?
Yeah, his phone number and address and social insurance number. I told myself to make sure I actually write in this time. Then it slipped my mind again about a week, but here we are. You, too, voiced two of the best characters I've ever had the opportunity to animate. Okay. I'm referring to Word and Mordred Payne.
Oh, my God.
Do you know Dustin?
I don't know. Name dropper, whatever.
Flashback to about 8 years ago when I was fresh out of animation school and Dragon Booster was the first show I ever got to work on. It also opened my eyes to the world of voice acting. Everyone brings so much vocal talent to the table that it makes it so easy for us to figure out how we're going to make a character act. Sure, video reference is great and all, but with you guys that is hardly needed. This was confirmed by seeing Mark at the Christmas party, carrying himself with the same regal presence that we animated Word Pain with. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but it was still pretty awesome.
I think I was drinking heavily.
I know I get far more regal after I'm drinking heavily. I'm about to be really freaking regal in about an
Regal
hour.
or legal?
My question to the both of you is... Oh, this is interesting. Do you prefer landing main character full series roles? Or the cameo characters that show up for an episode or two and are usually more kooky than the main cast? I know that I definitely had fun with Mark on Stormhawks and his portrayal of the Spanish Spider, the Colonel, and the Buford T. Justice homage that was Mr. Moss. Anyhow, keep on rocking in the voice world, and I look forward to working with you guys again in the future. Do you prefer to do mainline cast or guest star roles, which tend to be a little more interesting? For example, I can't talk
My
about that.
accountant likes the former, but professionally, I mean, I have to say, I enjoy the latter because they've decided that they've got you for the day, and you can just go crazy. And they're like, "What can we do?" Because they're not thinking particularly about your through line. Another thing is that you can show up for the one-off thing, and then they gauge fan reaction, and they go, well, we have to bring this person back.
Yeah.
This happened to me quite recently where I was doing some deep fried kind of Tommy Lee Jones character on a show, which is coming out very soon. And it seemed like a sort of a peripheral character, but on the basis of the test audience reaction, they decided, they're going to make that into a regular character.
Right.
So I really don't know what to say. I mean, I like building a character over the course of episodes, but if it's a question of showing up maybe once or twice, I like to try and render how can I say? I like to render those I like to render a finely etched character for my brief moment in the limelight.
Yes, to make a splash.
Yeah.
For example, on this show that you're talking about, which I of course will not name either, I played sort of an Elvis type, which was nice, man. It was.
You were
pretty
but
cool.
I mean, it's like Trevor's Elvis. I have to send him. I've got an Elvis trove. I'm going to send Trevor afterwards. But he invests a tremendous amount of effort into the essence of Elvis. You don't understand. You people will never understand. You'll never grasp what is the essence of the king.
It's far more in Graceland, baby. Far more. My name is Brody from Brookhaven, Mississippi. And firstly, I'd like to say that I love the podcast and all the work you've done. The first question out of two is one for me. Upon seeing Gundam Seed and hearing your awesome role as Mula Flaga, I was really surprised when I discovered that it was in fact you voicing Patrick Kolasauer from Gundam 00. Both characters I really love, and so I would ask you if Moo and Patrick ever had the chance to meet each other, what would they discuss? I think Patrick would probably try and make a play for Moo's current love interest, and Moo, would threaten him in a very cool Han Solo-y kind of way. I think that's what would go on there. I don't think they'd have a lot in common. And for Mr. Oliver, I absolutely love your roles you play as the bad guys, especially Raoul Le Creuset from Gundam Seed, who is my favorite, and I hope you will return to the Gundam franchise if future roles become available. But to the point, I have heard that the Warhammer games are notorious for having roles that are harsh on the voice. Were you weary from doing roles in the Warhammer games after doing work on Warhammer 40K? Did you think that work on those video games could possibly jeopardize your voice or perhaps damage them in some way?
Well, I'll tell you something. No one knows this, but I've been an avid yoga practitioner for 13 years, and I've studied something called... Do you really want me to use the Sanskrit? I'm not going to... I practice a type of breathing exercise which expands the lung capacity by threefold, because there are many times in the course of our work where they'll say, that was an excellent fall off a cliff, and your scream falling off the cliff was extremely evocative. Now, could you do that again and add another 200 feet to the fall? And we'll do it over and over and over and over and over again. Those are very tiring days, and... I really don't know. I think.
Oh, they're coming for us.
Yeah.
It's all right. No, it's good. Carry on.
It's good. They found us.
They found us.
Jamie.
Puts lotion in the basket.
Nonsense. They'll never take us alive. In any event, those are very challenging. Those are very, very challenging days, and I'm happy to have found some kind of discipline in order to prepare for those sort of events. Because I will read the scripts if indeed we have them. Sometimes for anime, we don't even have them. We practice up on that stuff to get ready for those days, and evocative screaming and. Trevor will be able to tell you how challenging it can be to do a whole library of what we call walla for a show, where they want you to die 17 different ways by rapier thrust, by rifle shot,
and each one is short, medium, and long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it is difficult. Those, I've talked ad nauseum about the voice record on this show. This is from Chris from New Brunswick. My first question has to do with the bronies. What do you think makes the new version of My Little Pony so appealing to middle-aged men that it has generated such a large fandom? I have no idea. I've only seen one episode of the show, My Little Pony, and yeah, it's good, man. And it looks cool, and it's great, and it's well voice acted. But honestly, I really don't get it. I mean, I'm all
These
for
are
it.
middle-aged guys with pony names at the conventions.
Yeah, that's right. The bronies. And, they'll go to great lengths to bring us to these conventions and stuff. And I think it's awesome. It's great that they've got this thing. But I don't get it. So I'll tell you, the first time I go to my first BronyCon, I want to ask them that. I want to find out exactly what it is about My Little Pony. And I'm sure we'll get a very...
Sources represent freedom, man.
That's right, man, because, without the freedom, you can't... It's like nothing being on the range on the back of a horse. Not that there's anybody actually riding the horses, My Little Pony, but you understand.
I don't know. I'm off on a thing here. Okay. Second question. Being a big fan of Reboot, I'm frustrated but not surprised that the film intended to resolve the cliffhanger from 2001 is stalled. Do you think it's feasible for the Canadian fan community to crowdfund a film production to get it off the ground? Were you in Reboot?
No,
neither was I.
Before my time. My question for you would be, would you want to see Reboot rendered in that same style of CGI, which was possible, or have the audience's collective eye become so sophisticated at this point that they would look at that like
some
folklore
archaic thing, yeah,
like digital folklore.
Right. That's an excellent question, actually. I wonder, because that was like the first big animated like CGI series, and now to have a show come back, what would you do? Would you retain?
Well, it's sort of like, I mean,
That's
you guys have ever watched the Money for Nothing video by Dire Straits, which was like,
oh yes, right, right,
When
and
it
that was
came out.
here.
Yeah.
that they did it. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a very good question. So, Chris, you must now answer Mark's question.
We answer your question with a question.
We are rude that way. I've been meaning... This is from Randy. I've been meaning to write you for some time now. Just wanted to thank you so much for doing your podcast. It's incredibly informative and really, really entertaining. You and your guests have put such huge smiles on my and all my friends' faces. Well, thank you so much. Yes. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but I don't want to go on about how great the show is because. So, Randy, we'll just keep the compliments between you and me. Aaron, this is from Aaron. Hey there, Trev, and of course, Mr. Mark Oliver. Don't actually have a question. Only many compliments. Well, stop. I did. This is great, and I wish I could show you guys this. She attached. She says I attach a picture of some dolls that I made because apparently I have too much time on my hands. It's a doll. I have to show you this, Mark, of Raoul Le Creuset and Moula Flaga. She made little dolls of them. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I have to show you this thing. It's so cool. But she does have have a question here. For the sake of asking a question, can either of you can either of you do a Newfie accent? I'm on my way there in a few days, so I thought it might be fun to hear the two of you do one.
Trevor, you're going to have to teach me how to do it.
I couldn't teach you. You are the master of the accent.
I can't. I have to tell you, this is Trevor's bailiwick. It really is. Trevor, go on.
Well, the thing is, right, that everybody seems that they think they know about Newfoundland, right, is that it's Irish, but she's not Irish, right? For the first thing, right, you might say, the first thing is she's pretty flat and kind of nasal in the back of the mouth like that, right? There's very little sort of Irish lilt that goes on there, right? And she's out in the front of the mouth like that, and she's pretty lazy as well. So it's hard to understand, and that's what's it's saying, right? That's a real nice outport accent, that. But it's not a towny accent, because if you go to St. John's, Newfoundland, they start to get a little more refined, as you've heard, and now you can understand what they're saying a little more. But, you know, you get good outport Newfoundland like that, Cornerbrook and such like that.
You see, you can't see this, but I'm a voice actor watching another voice actor do something that's a real specialty of his. And the three ways that I have of breaking down how a foreign accent or regional dialect is rendered, there are three things. 1, pitch. 2, tone, what the linguists call the tonal point of focus, where you send sound to vibrate in your mouth or throat. And the lilt, or the musicality that the speaker invests in the way they are doing this particular voice. So been a very educational experience for me, Trevor.
And for me too, because I wouldn't have been able to break that down like that. I did a play years ago that ran for 4 years, which was about a bunch of Newfoundlanders going across the country. So
to much success.
To much success, yes, we did very well with that. So there you go, Aaron. You can park your boots under the bed for that one. There we go.
Isn't that brilliant? My God.
Let's see. Hi, Trevor. Who's this from? Blake. This is someone from here. This is a fella from here who's taking workshops with Michael Dangerfield and Lee Tokar, actually. Lee, who's been a guest on the show. Whenever you have to voice a character that another actor has had their hand at, such as Dookie from Johnny Test, because of course I wound up replacing Louis Chirillo when he went off to Brazil, do you believe it's better to try your own take at the character or to copy what they did? This is a question about voice matching, obviously. I've always felt that when you are asked to match a voice, they're not looking for an exact impression. They're looking for someone to sort of inhabit the essence of that character. Right? Like if you listen to my Dookie versus Louis' Dookie, they're very different in terms of what they sound like, but the essence of the character is still there.
We recently had a bout of auditions for a very something that would be a very hotly contested iconic brand, and they were very insistent on making sure that people rendered very faithful voice matches for the characters as they were rendered for the first in its initial incarnation. To a degree that surprised even me, because I generally go with just what Trevor said, that I think, no. I mean, of course, they're going for a kind of a kind of tonal match and so on, but really they look for inflections and kind of personality tics that one would associate with the original performance.
Right.
So it's a very interesting thing, and I've done things that were voice matches, and then it just sort of started to go off into its own kind of terra incognita, and people let it go because it was interesting. I mean, I like to think that what I did was an interesting job, and I think they'll suspend disbelief if it continues on just sort of being captivating, because that's the name of the game,
Right.
Because it's not like, like, oh, if we're going to do Austin Powers, if we had to be the new Austin Powers, if they did an Austin Powers animated show, of course we would do all the sort of silly things that you associate with Austin Powers, but we know enough about the type of individual coming from this particular time period and so on, how they would use English in a very funny way, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say Trevor and I could probably render extremely evocative Austin Powers in a way that Mike Myers himself could never imagine.
Only dream. I agree.
You're putting words into my mouth, Trevor.
It's what I do. It's my show.
Does that answer anyone's question?
This is from Megan. We sort of already touched on this, but I thought that being as you guys had some of the most popular roles among fans of Dragon Booster, like Word and Mordred, she wants to ask a question. Tell me how much you enjoyed working on that show, and what was it like, and would you do voice work as Word Pain again if another season ever came out?
Well, I love the clothes.
Really
Sometimes I won't work on an animated show. When I look at how the characters dress, I think, I will not wear that.
This wardrobe is completely wrong.
But Ward, I'll tell you something that made Word and Mordred so great. We had the best hair on that show.
Yep.
And we got really cool clothes.
Yep, that's true.
And
It's true.
we would do, of course we would do it again. And I think, did we carry the whole thing on our backs?
Well, let's face it, because the villains are always more interesting.
The villains are more
than
interesting
the good guys.
Come on. I'm going to say, I think the villains are more interesting because I think that a lot of audiences live vicariously through the lives of villains, because we're allowed to do a lot of things that you would never, ever be allowed to do in real life.
Yeah.
If you watch Silence of the Lambs and you see Hannibal Lecter escape from captivity, who in the movie theater goes, catch him, catch him? It's always like, run, Hannibal, run, run. Why is that?
Get away, you murdering bastard!
We need sociologists and psychologists to better answer that question. But it is a very interesting aspect. It goes all the way back to, dare I say it, Milton's Paradise Lost, when the character of Satan is rendered in such a fascinating way, and you care about this anti-hero.
Yeah.
And you know that person will never redeem themselves, but you watch and you just think, what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next?
Exactly. That was a great show, and again, we've sort of already talked about our experiences on that. Yes, I would definitely do that again if it came back. This is from Zach. Our final question. Hey, Trevor, short-time listener, long-time fan, love the show. Have you or any other voice actor you ever know? Whoops. I tried that again in the English language. Have you or any other voice actor you know ever worried about voicing a character too well? By that, I mean, have you ever been afraid of voicing a character so well that people will start to think that you actually act like the character outside of the studio, like Mark Oliver, who played Rattler Crusade so well that he must be at least a little psychopathic? But you're a very nice man, Mark. All of your friends say so.
My father defended. My father defended quite a rogue gallery of murderers, and I would ask him. I'd say, "Dad, what were the 3 most compelling murder cases you got a chance to work on?" And he'd talk about the Casa Grande case, and he'd talk about the Clifford Olson case, and I'd say, "How do you get inside of the mind of somebody like that?"
Mm-hmm.
And he would explain to me how he did it, and I suppose it's just a sort of an overwhelming fascination with the the full arc of human behavior. We have to look with unblinking eyes at what makes a human being, and I don't know. I guess I don't put any brakes on. I'm not interested in the brakes. I'm only interested in going further and further and further and further and further. Is it because I like the sensationalism of it? I suppose people respond to it professionally. I'll need a lot more time to answer that type of question better. But
Well,
I'm going to go away and think about
Yes, and when we have you back on the show, as I'm sure we will, in some sort of strange round table format that I'm toying with, you and Tabitha St. Germain. And, oh, yes, can you imagine?
that. Can't even imagine.
Anyway, that finally brings us to the end of the show. My God, it has been 1 hour and 40 minutes already. At least according to my, it's probably a little longer than that with the commercial break thrown in there. Wow, that's a good sign, though. That's a good sign that we could sit here and yak this whole time.
Can I say it's been a kick for me? That's what you young people say.
That's what the kids say. It's groovy. I think it's been groovy.
Quite a gas.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was great to have you on the show. Our next guest is a guest that all you My Little Pony fans are going to be clamoring to hear. Tune in next time. I hope it's not another 8 months. I'm gonna say December. That's I'm gonna put my foot down now and say November, December. We are gonna have Miss Andrea Libman on the show from My Little Pony fame, as well as many other shows. She is a tremendous voice actress and just a great girl. So she is going to be our next guest on what I presume will be Voiceprint episode 35, if I've got my numbers right. Anyway, once again, thank you, Mark, so much.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for being on the show, and thank you everybody who wrote in with questions, and keep listening.
Amen. Once again, I am your intrepid host, and I bid you a fond farewell, my friends, as you now leave me to the ethereal internet. Where am I? I don't know what I'm doing. This is just might be an interesting way to go out. Anyway, that's it for me. That's it for Mark. And we will see you on the flip side.